The war between humans and Valyrians had lasted for hundreds of years. It had taken countless lives and left galaxies in ruins. The humans called the Valyrians monsters, and the Valyrians called the humans savages. Peace seemed impossible, until one man volunteered to try. His name was Captain Ethan Cole, a brave soldier from Earth who had seen too much death and destruction. When he was chosen to represent the humans in the peace negotiations, many said he was walking into his death. But Ethan didn't care. He wanted to end the endless bloodshed. He wanted hope. The meeting was to be held on Valara, the Valyrian homeworld. It was a place of crystal towers, glowing rivers, and twin moons that shone like silver eyes in the sky. Ethan had never seen anything so beautiful. And yet, when he first saw Princess Seraphina, he realized even this world's beauty faded before her. She entered the grand chamber with the grace of flowing water. Her skin shimmered like light on glass. Her hair glowed faintly with silver hues, and her eyes were unlike anything human. They looked like galaxies, endless and full of stars. When she spoke, her voice was soft but strong, filled with the weight of centuries. "So you are the human they sent?" she asked, her tone cold, curious, almost cautious. Ethan bowed his head slightly. "Yes, Your Highness. I came not to fight but to understand." She tilted her head. "Understand? You humans destroy what you do not understand." Her words were sharp, but her eyes were searching. Ethan didn't flinch. He met her gaze and said quietly, "Then let me be the first to break that pattern." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The guards around them shifted, uneasy. No one spoke to the royal bloodline like that. But Seraphina didn't punish him. Instead, she looked at him longer, as if trying to see through his soul. Then she simply said, "We shall see." That was how it began. Two souls from enemy worlds, brought together by chance and purpose. Over the next few weeks, Ethan was invited to attend more meetings with the Royal Council. Seraphina was always there, her expression calm, her voice wise. Yet sometimes, when she looked at him, there was a softness, a curiosity that shouldn't have been there. One evening, when the sun of Valara was setting and the skies turned violet, Seraphina found Ethan standing by the balcony of his quarters. He was watching the glowing rivers below, lost in thought. She stepped closer, the soft sound of her steps making him turn. "Do you miss your world?" she asked. "Every day," he replied quietly. "But sometimes I think I was sent here for a reason." She smiled faintly. "And what reason is that?" He looked into her eyes. "To understand what humanity has been fighting against, and maybe to see if there's something worth fighting for instead." For the first time, Seraphina laughed softly. It was a beautiful sound, like crystal bells. "You speak strangely for a soldier, Ethan Cole." "Maybe I'm tired of being one," he said, smiling gently. After that, their meetings became more personal. Seraphina would walk with him through the palace gardens filled with glowing flowers. She would show him the sacred trees that connected to the planet's energy. And he would tell her about Earth's blue oceans and the rain that kissed the ground. Sometimes she would close her eyes as he spoke, imagining the feel of rain on her face. "Your world sounds soft," she whispered once. "Ours has only fire and crystal." "Then maybe," he said softly, "you'd like the rain." Their talks turned into laughter, their laughter into silence, and their silence into unspoken connection. They began to understand each other in ways words could not describe. She saw in him a heart pure and brave, something her people rarely believed humans possessed. He saw in her not an alien, but a soul yearning for peace just like his own. But love in times of war is dangerous. Every stolen glance, every shared moment, every soft smile was a risk. The galaxy would never accept a union between a human soldier and a Valyrian princess. And yet, in those quiet moments under the silver sky, Ethan didn't care. When Seraphina smiled at him, he forgot the war, the walls between species, and the fate of empires. In her presence, he wasn't just a soldier. He was a man who had finally found something worth living for. And deep down, though she didn't say it, Seraphina felt the same. She, the heir to a galactic throne, who had never known the warmth of real love, began to realize that this fragile, flawed human had somehow touched her heart. It was the beginning of something forbidden, something powerful, something that could change the stars themselves. Days turned into weeks, and Captain Ethan Cole's meetings with Princess Seraphina continued. At first, their conversations were about peace treaties and diplomacy, but slowly something changed. Their talks grew softer, more personal. They began to meet not in grand halls filled with guards and nobles, but in quiet gardens and shadowed balconies where the stars could hear their hearts speak. Every night, the twin moons of Valara shone like silent witnesses to a love neither of them could admit aloud. The palace gardens glowed with blue and silver light, the flowers humming softly with energy. It was there that Ethan often found peace after long, tense meetings. And often it was there that Seraphina would find him. One evening she approached him quietly, her silver gown flowing like water. He was sitting by the crystal fountain looking up at the stars. "Your people love the stars, don't they?" she asked gently. Ethan smiled. "We always have. Maybe because we've always dreamed of reaching them." She sat beside him, her eyes following his gaze. "And now you have. You reached us. But maybe," Ethan said softly, "we weren't ready for what we found." Seraphina turned her face toward him, her expression tender. "You think we are monsters, don't you?" He shook his head. "No, I think you're just different, but not evil. Just as humans aren't as cruel as your people believe." She smiled sadly. If only our worlds could see through each other's eyes. For a long time they sat in silence, listening to the soft hum of the night. Then, as a gentle wind blew, a glowing petal drifted from a nearby flower and landed on Seraphina's hand. She looked at it and whispered, "Do humans believe in destiny?" Ethan looked at her hand, then into her shining eyes. "We believe we make our own." She met his gaze for a long, quiet moment. Something unspoken passed between them, something fragile, dangerous, and beautiful. From that night onward, their secret meetings became a part of their lives. Sometimes they met in the royal library, hidden behind shelves of ancient scrolls. Other times they walked the outer gardens where no guards patrolled. Ethan would tell her stories about Earth, about the ocean waves crashing on the shore, about the smell of rain, about music and laughter. Seraphina would close her eyes and imagine it all. "Your world sounds alive," she said once. "Our world feels heavy, perfect but cold. Maybe it just needs someone to warm it," Ethan said softly. Her eyes opened, meeting his. There was a warmth there that made her heart tremble. "And maybe," she replied, "that someone shouldn't be you." He smiled sadly. Too late. The air between them grew heavy, but not with fear, with feeling. They both knew what they were risking. For Seraphina, love was forbidden. Her life was bound by duty and royal expectation. For Ethan, being discovered with her would mean death, yet neither could stay away. There were nights when she would bring him glowing fruit from her homeworld, and he would share a small bar of earth chocolate in return. They laughed over the strange tastes, joked about their different customs, and sometimes sat in silence, just watching the stars. In those moments, they forgot who they were. She was not a princess, and he was not a soldier. They were just two souls lost in the same universe. But every happiness carries a shadow. One night, as they stood by the edge of the glowing river, Seraphina suddenly grew quiet. "Ethan," she whispered, "if they ever find out about us, it will destroy you." He turned to her, taking her hands gently. "Then let it. I've seen death before, but I've never seen life like I do when I'm with you." Her lips parted, trembling with emotion. "Why do you say such things?" "Because they're true," he said. "You make me believe peace isn't just a dream. You make me believe love is possible even between enemies." Tears welled in her bright eyes. "You don't understand, Ethan. I am not free. My father has already chosen my future." He looked at her, pain in his eyes. "Then what about your heart? Has he chosen that too?" For a moment she said nothing. Then with a trembling voice she whispered, "My heart stopped being mine the day I met you." The words hung in the air like a secret oath. Neither of them dared to speak after that. As the moons of Valara shone above them, their hands touched, fingers intertwining under the silver glow. The stars seemed to hold their breath, as if the universe itself had paused to witness a forbidden love blooming in the darkness. They knew their story could never be told. They knew it might end in pain or worse, but for that moment, nothing else mattered. It was love, pure, impossible, and real. And though the world around them burned with hatred and pride, in that secret garden under those twin moons, two hearts began to beat as one. Love can hide in the shadows, but not forever. Above them, The moons of Velara shone softly, unaware that in the darkness beneath their glow, two hearts had made a promise that would shake the stars themselves. The night sky over Velara was filled with light. Not the gentle light of its twin moons, but the sharp glare of alarms and ships. Searchlights swept across the royal city as soldiers shouted commands. Every tower glowed red, a sign that something forbidden had happened. Captain Ethan Cole ran through the crystal corridors, his heart pounding in his chest. His breath came fast, his footsteps echoing on the shining floors. Behind him, he could still hear the faint hum of pursuit, guards chasing, scanners searching. But ahead there was something stronger than fear guiding him. Her voice. Turn left at the end of the hall. Serafina's voice whispered through the small communicator she had placed in his hand before he left the dungeon. There's a maintenance shaft that leads to the outer docks. Ethan followed her words, trusting her completely. He ducked into the narrow passageway, his hands brushing against the smooth, glowing walls. The shaft was tight and dark, but he kept crawling, ignoring the pain in his arms. He could still remember the warmth of her last kiss, the tremble in her voice when she said goodbye. That memory kept him moving. Finally, he emerged at the outer docks, a vast open area beneath the palace, filled with sleek silver ships and blue energy lights. Guards patrolled everywhere, their armor glinting. But Serafina had prepared everything. Behind a row of cargo containers sat a small vessel, an old diplomatic shuttle, disguised and ready. Its engines hummed softly, waiting. Ethan smiled faintly. She thought of everything. He was just about to move when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned sharply, only to see her. Serafina stood there, wearing a dark cloak that hid her royal insignia. Her silver hair was tied back, and her eyes were full of both fear and love. "You shouldn't be here," he said in shock. "They'll find you." "I couldn't let you go alone," she whispered, stepping closer. "You wouldn't survive without someone to guide you through the blockade." He stared at her, torn between joy and panic. "You'll be branded a traitor." "I already am," she said softly, "for loving you." Before he could say another word, the sound of alarms grew louder. A squad of guards appeared at the far end of the dock. "Serafina," one of them shouted. "By order of the Emperor, surrender yourself." She grabbed Ethan's hand. "Run!" They sprinted together toward the ship, the sound of energy blasts echoing behind them. The floor lit up as bolts struck near their feet. Ethan covered her as they reached the shuttle's door. He slammed the entry pad, and the hatch opened with a hiss. They stumbled inside, and Serafina jumped to the pilot's seat. Her hands moved quickly over the controls. "Hold on!" she cried. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle shot upward just as guards fired another volley of blasts. The ship shook violently, but it broke through the palace dome and soared into the open sky. Outside, the stars spread before them like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Ethan watched through the window, breathing hard. For the first time in days, he felt air that wasn't poisoned by fear. Serafina's hands trembled on the controls. "We're not safe yet. The fleet will chase us." Ethan moved beside her. "Then let's outrun them." The first Valyrian warships appeared on their scanners within minutes. Blue light flared as plasma beams sliced through the darkness. The small shuttle shuddered as one beam grazed its wing. Ethan grabbed the co-pilot's seat. "What can I do?" "Just trust me," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. He looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, the calm strength in her voice, and realized how much she had changed. She was no longer just a princess trapped by duty. She was a woman willing to defy an empire for love. As the shuttle twisted through debris fields and streaks of light, Ethan couldn't help but smile. "You're amazing," he whispered. She laughed softly, her voice trembling. "Don't flatter me when we might die." "If I die," he said, looking straight at her, "I want it to be beside you." Her eyes flickered toward him, full of warmth and pain. "Don't say that. We'll live. We have to." The shuttle broke free of the planet's gravity, entering the black sea of space. Behind them, the royal fleet grew smaller and smaller. Finally, after one last jump through the starlight, the radar fell silent. They had escaped. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence of space wrapped around them, soft and endless. Serafina leaned back in her seat, breathing heavily. Ethan turned to her, his heart full. "We're free," he said softly. She smiled weakly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "No, Ethan, we've only just begun to run." He reached over, taking her hand gently. Then wherever we go together, their fingers intertwined. Outside the window, the stars stretched on forever, like a promise waiting to be kept. And as the small ship drifted deeper into the galaxy, Serafina whispered to herself, "If love can survive war, then maybe it can survive the universe too." The engines hummed softly, carrying them toward the unknown. Two hearts escaping the chains of empires, bound only by love and the endless stars. Days turned into weeks as Ethan and Serafina drifted through the cold silence of space. Their small shuttle floated among the stars like a forgotten dream, far from any known system. They had no home, no kingdom, and no safety, but they had each other. Inside the ship, the lights were dim. The hum of the engine was the only sound. Ethan worked on repairing the navigation system, while Serafina sat by the window, staring at the endless sky. The glow of distant suns reflected in her silver eyes. "How long can we keep running?" she whispered. Ethan looked up from his tools. His face was tired, but his eyes were warm. "As long as we have to," she smiled faintly. "You always make it sound simple." "It is," he said softly. "As long as you're with me, I'll keep going." Serafina turned her gaze back to the stars. Her heart ached with both love and guilt. She had betrayed her father, her empire, her people. Every message from the royal fleet that appeared on their scanner reminded her of what she had lost. Posters called her the traitor princess. Some transmissions even promised a reward for her capture, dead or alive. Yet when she looked at Ethan, none of that mattered. He had given up his world, his safety, everything, just to be with her. And that thought filled her heart with both pride and pain. One night as they sat together in the quiet ship, Ethan noticed she was crying silently. He moved closer. "Hey," he whispered, "what's wrong?" She shook her head, wiping her tears quickly. "I just keep thinking, I took everything from you. Your future, your peace. You could have lived a simple life on Earth, but now you're trapped in this endless running because of me." Ethan gently took her hands in his. "Serafina, listen to me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Before I met you, I had nothing worth fighting for. My world was small, full of empty victories. You gave my life meaning. I don't regret a single moment." She looked at him with trembling lips. "Even now, when everyone hunts us?" He smiled softly. "Especially now." Serafina leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. In the soft blue light of the ship, their hearts spoke without words. For a moment, the universe disappeared. No fleets, no fear, just love suspended in the silence of space. But peace never lasted long. The next morning, the radar blinked red. A signal was approaching fast. 3 Valyrian scout ships. They had been found. Ethan jumped into the pilot's seat. "Hold on!" he shouted as the engines roared. Serafina joined him, trying to reroute the shields. The first energy blast struck the shuttle, shaking it violently. Sparks flew across the cockpit. "They're disabling our systems," Serafina cried. "Not today," Ethan growled, pulling the controls sharply. The small ship spun through a field of frozen asteroids, weaving between chunks of rock and ice. Blasts followed them, lighting up the darkness with deadly blue streaks. One asteroid exploded near their hull, sending the ship spinning. Alarms blared. Serafina screamed as she hit the side panel. Ethan grabbed her hand before she fell. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly, her silver hair falling across her face. "Yes. But we're losing power." "Then we'll have to hide," Ethan said, steering the shuttle into the shadow of a giant asteroid. They powered down the engines, leaving the ship drifting in the dark. The enemy scanners passed over them, searching, scanning, but after a tense few minutes, the lights faded. They were safe again. Ethan exhaled deeply, leaning back. Serafina rested her head on his shoulder. Both of them were trembling. "Every day we survive feels like a miracle," she whispered. He wrapped his arm around her. "Then we'll keep making miracles." In the silence that followed, she looked up at him, her eyes full of tears. "Ethan, if we die out here, I want you to know something." He turned to her, his voice soft. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her voice shaking. "I've never loved anyone like I love you. Not as a princess, not as a royal duty, but as a woman. You are my choice." Ethan's throat tightened. He cupped her face gently. "And you're mine. No empire can take that away." They kissed, slow and deep, while outside the stars watched silently. Later, As they drifted through the darkness, Serafina whispered, "One day we'll stop running. We'll find a place where no one knows our names." Ethan smiled faintly, his eyes closing. "And there you'll wear a real wedding ring, not just the memory of a promise." She looked down at the small silver band tied around her finger with a piece of thread, a makeshift ring he had given her the night they escaped. It wasn't gold or royal, but it was real. And in that quiet corner of space, with nothing but each other and the endless sky, that small piece of love was more precious than any throne. The galaxy around them had grown quiet again. After escaping the last patrol, Ethan and Serafina's shuttle floated near the edge of a dying star. The faint red light filled the cockpit, bathing them in warmth that felt like a heartbeat. But the ship was breaking down. The engines were weak and the oxygen systems were failing. Every breath was getting thinner, every sound softer. Ethan sat near the control panel, his eyes scanning the screens. "The power cells are almost gone," he said softly. "We might not make another jump." Serafina stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Then maybe we don't need to," she whispered. He looked up at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly, though her eyes were filled with tears. "We've been running for so long, Ethan. Maybe it's time to stop." He shook his head. "No, there's always a way. We just have to keep fighting." But she knew. The numbers on the screen told a truth that courage could not change. The oxygen would last only a few more hours. The nearest planet was days away. Even if they tried, they wouldn't survive. Serafina knelt beside him, her silver hair glowing in the red light. "Do you remember what you told me that night in the dungeon?" Ethan's voice trembled. "That I wanted to marry you." She nodded slowly. "And do you still mean it?" He looked at her, his eyes full of emotion. "More than ever." She smiled softly, her lips trembling. "Then marry me now, here." Among the stars, Ethan froze. His throat tightened and tears filled his eyes. "Serafina." She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "We may not have a world or people or a kingdom, but we have love. Let's make it real before the end." He couldn't speak for a moment. His chest felt heavy with both love and sorrow. Finally he nodded. "Then let it be here. And now." They stood together in the middle of the small ship, surrounded by the quiet hum of fading power. The stars outside shimmered like witnesses. Serafina held his hands tightly and their eyes locked. She spoke first, her voice soft but steady. "Ethan Cole from the world of Earth, I give you my heart. I choose you not as a princess, but as a woman who found peace in your arms." Ethan's hands shook as he replied, "Serafina of Valara, daughter of 1,000 suns, I give you everything I am. I may be just a man, but my love for you is as endless as the stars." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "Then I am yours, forever." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the thin silver thread that once tied the small ring around her finger. Carefully, he wrapped it again, tighter this time, as if sealing their bond with the last breath of their lives. When he finished, she leaned in and kissed him, slow, deep, full of every memory they had shared. It wasn't a desperate kiss. It was peaceful, like the final page of a beautiful story. Outside, the dying star flickered. Inside, their love glowed brighter than any sun. Hours passed like moments. The oxygen gauge kept falling. The lights dimmed one by one. Ethan leaned back against the wall, holding Serafina close. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Soft, fading but steady. "Ethan," she whispered. "Yes? If there's another life after this, promise me. We'll find each other again." He smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "Even if it takes 1,000 galaxies." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down. "Then I'll wait for you." The last light flickered. The ship was silent except for their breaths, growing slower, softer. Ethan looked at her face, peaceful, beautiful, calm. He kissed her forehead gently. "I love you," he whispered. Her lips curved into a small smile. "My answer," she breathed weakly, "is still yes." And then, the red light of the dying star filled the cabin one last time, before fading into the cold darkness of space. But somewhere, beyond the edge of time, two souls drifted together, no longer hunted, no longer afraid. Legends would later whisper of a human and an alien princess whose love defied empires, whose hearts burned brighter than the stars themselves. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, travelers sometimes claim to see a faint light, a small, silver ship floating among the constellations. Inside it, two figures sat side by side, hand in hand, watching the universe they once fought to escape. Their love had outlasted everything, their promise had crossed the stars, and though their bodies were gone, their story remained, eternal, beautiful, and unbroken. For even in death, her answer would always be the same. My answer is yes. For weeks, Captain Ethan Cole and Princess Seraphina had managed to keep their secret safe. They met under the glowing trees, spoke softly behind marble pillars, and smiled only when no one was looking. But destiny has a way of finding out the things hearts try to hide. One night, as the silver moons of Valara hung low, Seraphina slipped quietly into the royal gardens. Ethan was already there, waiting under the same crystal tree where they had shared their first touch. The flowers around them glowed softly, painting her in silver light. "I thought you wouldn't come," Ethan whispered. "I almost didn't," she said, her voice trembling. The council grew suspicious. "My father asked too many questions," he stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time I speak to him." "If he knew what we know," she interrupted sharply. Her eyes widened with fear. "If you speak of this, he will have you executed. You don't understand our laws, Ethan. A union between Valyrian and human is forbidden. It's considered unnatural." Ethan's heart tightened, but he forced a smile. "Love isn't unnatural. It's the most natural thing in the universe." Her eyes softened. "You speak like poets of old Earth. You believe in feelings even when the stars are burning." He reached out, touching her hand. "Then let me burn for you." Her lips parted slightly, her breath shaky. The world seemed to hold still as their fingers intertwined. It was a dangerous closeness, one that could destroy them both, but neither wanted to pull away. Then, from the shadows behind them, a harsh metallic voice spoke. "What is this?" They turned quickly. A tall Valyrian guard stood there, his eyes glowing with alarm. He had seen everything, her hand in his, her closeness, her warmth toward a human. Seraphina's face went pale. "Please, it's not what you think." But the guard didn't listen. He pressed a device on his wrist, sending an alert. The council must see this. Ethan moved fast. With a soldier's instinct, he grabbed the guard's arm, twisting it and knocking the communicator away. The guard fell, but before Ethan could stop him, the man shouted, his voice echoing through the garden. Within moments, alarms began to blare through the palace. Red lights flashed, and the calm night turned into chaos. "Go," Seraphina urged, pushing Ethan toward the shadows. "They'll kill you if they find you." "I won't leave you," he shouted back, her voice cracked. "Please, Ethan. If they take you, I'll lose everything." But it was too late. The guards stormed into the garden, energy rifles raised. Ethan was surrounded. Seraphina tried to step forward, shouting, "Don't hurt him! He's with me!" Her words only made things worse. The soldiers froze in shock, realizing what her statement meant. Then one of them bowed slightly and said, "Your Highness, you must not speak further. The Emperor must decide this matter." Ethan was seized, his hands bound in glowing cuffs. The guards pulled him away as Seraphina cried out, "No, please!" He looked back one last time, their eyes meeting through the light and noise. "Don't let them take this from us," he said softly. "You promised me the stars." Tears rolled down her cheeks as he was dragged away into the shadows of the palace. The next morning, Ethan stood before the Valyrian High Council, his wrists still bound. The chamber was vast, filled with cold light and colder faces. At the center sat the Emperor, tall, regal, and terrifyingly calm. Beside him stood Seraphina, her head bowed, her hands trembling. "Human," the Emperor began, his voice deep as thunder. "You were welcomed here as an envoy of peace. Instead, you've dared to defile the honor of this empire. Do you deny your crime?" Ethan lifted his head. "If loving your daughter is a crime, then no, I don't deny it." A gasp spread across the room. Seraphina raised her head suddenly, her eyes wide with tears. "Father, please. He has done nothing wrong. He only spoke truth to me." The Emperor's expression hardened. "You have shamed your bloodline, Seraphina. You will forget this human, or you will no longer be my daughter." The words struck her like a blade. She fell to her knees, tears falling freely. "I cannot forget him." The Emperor turned his gaze toward Ethan. "Then you will watch him die." Guards moved closer, their weapons glowing with lethal light. Ethan's heart pounded, but his eyes never left hers. "Don't cry," he whispered. If I must die, at least I die knowing I loved something pure, Serafina screamed, her voice echoing through the chamber. No, please, Father. The Emperor hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand slowly. Take him to the dungeons. I will decide his fate at dawn. As Ethan was dragged away again, Serafina ran after him, but the guards held her back. Their eyes met one last time before the doors closed between them. And in that moment, the princess of a mighty empire realized that her heart no longer belonged to her world. It belonged to the human they had just condemned. The dungeon beneath the Valyrian palace was nothing like the shining halls above. It was cold and silent, filled with the hum of energy barriers and the faint echo of chains. Captain Ethan Cole sat alone inside a crystal cell, his wrists bruised from the glowing cuffs that bound him. The air smelled of metal and sadness. He didn't know how long he'd been there, hours, maybe days. There was no sunlight, no sound of life, only the steady beat of his own heart and the memory of her face. Serafina. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her trembling lips, her tear-filled eyes, the way she had screamed his name when the guards took him away. It was a sound that still haunted him. He had seen war, death, and suffering before, but this pain was different. This was the pain of losing something he never thought he'd find, love. Then, one night, when the silence felt too heavy to bear, the sound of soft footsteps echoed down the corridor. Ethan lifted his head. A faint light appeared beyond the bars, and then she stepped into view. Serafina, he whispered, his voice breaking. She was cloaked in silver, her hood pulled low, her face pale from sleepless nights. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, filled with worry and love. You shouldn't be here, Ethan said quickly, standing up. If they catch you, I don't care, she interrupted, her voice trembling. They're planning to execute you at sunrise. I can't let that happen. Ethan's breath caught. So it's true. Tears filled her eyes. My father believes killing you will restore his honor. He doesn't understand that killing you will destroy me. Ethan stepped closer to the barrier. You can't stop him, Serafina. You'll only get yourself punished, her voice broke. I would rather be punished than live in a world where you don't exist. For a moment, they just looked at each other through the glowing force field. The light between them shimmered softly, separating two souls who longed to touch. Ethan, she whispered. I made a promise to you once. I said I would show you the stars of my world. I haven't done that yet, he smiled weakly. Then we still have something to live for. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against the control panel beside the cell. I stole the override codes from the Royal Archives. I can open this barrier, but once I do, there's no going back. You'll have to run far away. Don't look back, he shook his head. I won't leave without you. You must, she said, her voice breaking. They'll never stop hunting us. You'll die if you stay. He stepped as close as he could, his hand resting against the invisible wall between them. Then I'll die loving you. I can live with that. Her tears fell freely now, glimmering like small stars as they touched the ground. Don't say that. Please don't make me weaker than I already am. The silence stretched. Only the hum of the energy field filled the air. Then slowly she pressed her hand to the control. The barrier shimmered once, then vanished with a soft sound. Ethan was free. Before he could speak, she stepped forward and threw her arms around him. For the first time since they met, there was no barrier, no rule, no distance. He felt her warmth, her heartbeat, her breath against his chest. I love you, she whispered, her voice trembling with truth. And that's why you have to go. He held her close, his voice rough. Come with me. I can't, she said, her eyes full of sorrow. If I leave, my people will destroy Earth. I must stay to stop them. But you, she touched his face gently. You must survive. He looked at her like a dying man looks at light. Serafina. She leaned up and kissed him softly. It was a kiss full of pain, love, and promises that could never be spoken aloud. When she pulled away, her tears sparkled in the dim light. Go now, she said, before I lose the courage to let you. Ethan hesitated for a heartbeat longer, then nodded. I'll come back for you. I swear it, she smiled faintly. Then I'll wait for you, even if it takes forever. He turned and disappeared into the dark corridors, guided only by her whispered directions and the sound of distant alarms beginning to ring again. As he vanished, Serafina placed her hand on her heart and whispered to the empty air, Forgive me, Father. But love is stronger than fear.